Good morning, students. So today we will continue our class, that is the ongoing chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce. And today we will be discussing many different topics, and those are very interesting and all about humans. Right? Till now we discussed about many different organisms, many different asexual reproduction processes, but today we will discuss like some reproduction processes in humans. So before moving into the main topic, I have some questions for you. So my first question is like, what all are your ages? Like your age, and you all have to share your ages. Okay, like some is 14, some is 15. Yes, very good. And what else? Okay, some are 16 also. Very good. Okay, so yes, as you can see that most of you are of 14, 15 and 16 age groups, right? So these are the like average age groups like 15 to 16 of your class children, right? So yes, as you can see in this picture also, like this is a class and usually their age gap will be like similar to you. Like some may be 14, some may be 15 and some may be 16. So yes. Okay, so now as you all told your ages, and we also know the average age of our class children is between 15 to 16. So now my question is, this age group, like 15 to 16, comes under which category? Like, are they children? Are they adult? Or like, yes, like which category they come in? Okay, I'm just waiting for your responses. Yes, okay. So yes, they come under the adolescence group. Yes, you all answered it correctly. And some of you also said that they comes under the teenage group. Yes. So they come under the teenage group, right? Teenage or adolescence. Adolescence. So which age group was coming under this teenage and adolescence? As you all are under teenage and adolescence, it was 15 to 16 years. Yes, very good. Very good. So now we will move on ahead. Now my third question to you is like, when you were a child, right, in your childhood, what was the like first change that you noticed on your own in your body that happened during your childhood period? Yes, during a childhood period, not adolescence or teenage period, but childhood period. You can also give the answer with the help of this picture. Yes, you can see some teeth are there, and they both are different kinds of teeth. So yes, with the help of this picture, you can give your answers. Like what change you notice in your childhood, in your whole body, or in any part of the body. The first change that you noticed. Yes. Okay. Some of you, you all have noticed many different changes, but the change that this picture is showing is first, we were born with a set of teeth, and those set of teeth were known as the milk teeth, right? Milk teeth. We all had milk teeth. But during our childhood, our milk teeth were broken one by one, and they got replaced by the permanent teeth, as you can see in the second picture. So what is like, what do your parents say about your milk teeth and permanent teeth, right? Like they must be saying that, yeah, milk teeth, what it is called in Hindi? It is called as the doodh ke dant. Okay. And like they must say, like you cannot afford to spoil the permanent teeth because they will not come again. So take care of your teeth. You must have heard this, right? Because milk teeth, uh, they usually broke after some period of time in your childhood, and then came the permanent teeth. So every one of you must have spoiled your milk teeth, but some of you must be careful with your permanent teeth because now you know that they may not come again. Okay, so this was the first change that you noticed during your childhood period, right? So now we will move on ahead and see some more interesting questions, such questions, right? So now we first discussed the changes that we noticed or saw during our childhood period. But now what changes we saw during the adolescence period? As we converted into a teenage or adolescence, what changes did we notice? Okay, during our adolescence period, what changes we noticed? So you all have to answer this question. What were the different changes that we all noticed? Okay, some they grew here. Yes, and these hair, where did these hair grew? Like yes, in armpits region. Yes, in armpits. What else? Where else? Yes, in facial region also, like beards, right? Yes. Like boys, they have more of beards, mustaches growing now than they were having in the childhood, as they were not having those things in the childhood, but they have it now. Okay, so this was one change. What else did you notice? Like, was there any change in your voice? Yes, the voice became more deep in case of boys, right? But what happened to the voice in case of girls? Yes, it became more sharper and more shrilly kind of voice. The girls get more shrilly kind of voice when they enter the adolescence period. So yes, these are the some changes that you all mentioned. Okay. And also one major change in girls that you can see under this teenage or adolescence period is it is related to something periods, like periods happen, right? So yes, the menstruation cycle begins. Menstruation cycle begins. Menstruation cycle begins in girls. So this is also one of the major change that happens during the adolescence period. So yes, so now we will see. So now our topic for today is like sexual maturity. What happens when our body sexually matures? Like what changes we can see in our body? So we will discuss more on this. Now, as you all gave the right answers, so now we will move more on it, on this topic. We will see some more details and some more changes that we can see in human bodies. Some changes may be similar in both the genders, in girls and boys, and some changes may be different in both genders. And we will see some different changes more that we missed while discussing earlier. Okay, so yes, the first change you can see in this picture is the hair. Like during our childhood, our body is not having much hair. Like it is hairless, more of a kind. It is more hairless. Like it is always clean, right? But during our adolescence, there are hair everywhere. Not only just in boys, but in girls also. So in which two particular region we can see hair more? So first is the armpits region. Like armpit is in the below part of the shoulder region. Like this is the shoulder, this is the armpit. So in this part of region, there is more growth of hair in both the cases, in boys also and in girls also. So this is one of the changes you see when you move from childhood to your adolescent period. And where do you see more hairs other than the armpits? In the genital region. Like in case of girls, the more hairs can be seen in the vaginal part, and in case of boys, more hairs can be seen in the part where there are testicles present. So this is also one like change that you see when you enter the adolescence period. So yes, hair, this is one of the main changes. Hair grows more in the armpit region and the genital area. So this was all about the first point, like the first change that you can notice, right? So we will now move on to our next change. So the next change that we can see in our body when we enter this adolescence period is, yes, you can see in the diagram. What is the change? Yes, it is again similar to the first one, hairs. So now in which region these hairs are growing? Yes, you can see like when we enter this adolescence period, you can see more hair is growing on the hand regions and more hair is growing on the leg region. And we are all so much like we don't like these hair growing in our body parts. We are so conscious about these hairs. Like, there are, you all must know what are the different accessories that we are getting in the market to remove all these hairs, like the razors are there, and there is a very famous advertisement that is on wheat. Wheat is a hair removal cream. So these all are the different things that we are getting on in the market to remove these hairs from a different region. So yes, so first difference that we saw is the hair, right? So where, in which all region does this hair grow? First, we saw in the armpits region, like here, in case of both girls and boys, and then in the genital regions, in case of girls, the vaginal region, and in case of boys, the testicle regions, right? And the third place where the hairs were growing more when we enter the adolescence period was in case of hands and in case of legs. So this was the major change that we observe. And also this problem, I hope no one likes it. No one of you likes it. This is also one change, very important change that happens when you enter the adolescence period. And I know most of you means like 100% of you don't like this change. No one of you like this. And there are many products in the market also to like to help us get over these changes. So this change is like the oily skin that we get, the oily skin and the pimples. This both of these are very deadly combinations that we don't like. Yes, pimples. Pimples in case of face, we get face acne, and it is also known as acne. In boys also, they get pimples, a lot of pimples, not only on face regions, in shoulder regions also, and in different regions of body part, but usually it happens on the facial part. So this is also one of the sign or one of the changes that happens when we enter the adolescent period. So now this was one change, the second change. Now coming to the third change. Third change is facial hair. This is also again related to the hair. Like as we saw, like when the boys usually enter the adolescence period, the facial, like there is more growth of hairs in the facial region, like the beard region in this part. So yes, this is also one of the change in boys, and usually the girls also start growing. In girls also there is some growth of hair in these regions, right? In facial region. That's why we are doing waxing and different processes to remove these facial hairs. Okay, so this was the other change. Now coming to the another change that happens is the cracked voice. Usually it happens in the male. Cracked voice means voice is different. We sound different in our childhood, but we sound different during our adolescent period. Like the boys, their voice gets more heavy, more deep, but in girls it gets more shrilly and like it's more sharp. The tone is more sharp. So this is also one of the change. Okay. So now we will see some more changes, and this is one of the change that we can see, like the enlarged and erect. Enlarged and erect. What happens in case of boys is like boys have a reproductive organ that is known as penis. So what happens to penis is it gets enlarged, means it gets bigger, and it also erects. Like erect means it like the standing up, and this process happens when you enter the adolescence period. So this is also one of the important change that happens during the adolescent period. This happens in case of boys, but what happens in case of girls? Let's see. In case of girls, there is a change in the breast size. Like earlier, during our childhood, the breasts are small. But when we enter the adolescent period, the breast, they get more heavier, more bigger. So this is one of the change. And one more change that happens in the breast is not only the size, but the skin of the nipple region. That also changes color. Like in some, it becomes more pinkish, in some, it becomes more brownish, blackish, more darker in color than the whole breast color. So this is also one of the change that happens when we enter the adolescent period. Now coming to our last point, that is menstruation cycle. This usually happens in the girls. Like the periods start when they enter the adolescent period. So this was all about the different changes that are happening. So now my question to you all is, do all these changes take place slowly over a period of months and years, or they happen all at the same time in everyone at the same time and age? So for this question, you have to find your answers in the internet, as this will take a long time for you to find because it is a little big question. And it is a very curious type of question, right? Okay, you can also give the answer with the help of this diagram, but we will move on ahead. We will see some more questions. Okay, so my question is, during adolescence, there are several changes occur in the human body, right? So you have to mark one change from the following associated with sexual maturity in boys. So what will be the answer for this? Okay, increase in height, cracking of voice, appearance of permanent teeth, and loss of milk teeth. So what will be the sexual maturation? The cracking of voice that we discussed earlier. Increase in height can also be one of the changes. Okay. So now we will move on ahead with our today's class. Okay. So yes. So yes, so now we saw many different changes that are happening in the human body when they enter from from their childhood phase to the adolescence phase. So now my question is, like, why are these changes important? What will happen if these changes will not happen? Like, as you all, yes, you all answering correctly. So as you all know, these changes are important for the reproduction to happen. Yes, very good. Okay. So now we will move on to our next slide. There is a diagram in front of you and you have to explain it with the help of this diagram, what you can see in this diagram. Okay. So yes, okay. In females, okay, I will give you 5 seconds to observe this diagram. For 10 seconds, you can take time of 10 seconds to observe this diagram till the time I will drink water. And then you will explain what is happening in this diagram. Okay. Okay. So what happens in this diagram is there is the female. The females are having an egg cell, like this is the egg cell here, and the male are having sperms, right? Sperms, both of the sperm and the eggs, they are the reproductive cells. And these are very special cells. Why? Because if these cells are present, then only reproduction will happen in humans. So that's why these cells are very important. So what happens in the process of reproduction in human is both of these cells, they fuse together. They fuse together and then they form a zygote, right? As you can see here, the sperms are coming to the egg cells and they fuse. As here you can see it fused, right? And it formed a zygote. After some time, the zygote develops and it forms the embryo. And after some time, like 9 months or so, this embryo keeps on developing, and it forms a whole human body that is a baby. This is how the reproduction happens in human beings. So we will move on ahead and we will see some more slides. So now, why sexual maturation is important? According we just discussed right now, why do you think now the sexual maturation is important? Yes. Okay. Yes, you all gave the right answer. It is important because only if we sexually mature, then only we will be able to reproduce sexually. For reproduction to happen, to attain sexual maturity is important. So this was one of the main reasons like why sexual maturation is important, right? So yes, we so yes, in this picture, as you can see, like both the males and the females have their reproductive organs. Like in case of males, they have testicles, and in case of females, they have ovaries, right? This ovary and this is the testicles, and they have their own like reproductive cells. Like the males are having sperms, and the females are having what? As we discussed earlier, yes, very good. The egg cells. So this is all this slide is showing. We will move on ahead. So now, yes, what is this slide saying is the body resources are directed towards the general growth of body during the childhood, right? So our body is usually like when during our childhood, all our energy of our body goes where? Like all our energy and resource of our body goes where? For the growth part, because childhood is all about growth. We will grow more and more physically. But what happens during the teenage or the adolescent period is we will see more of the details. But what happens in teenage or adolescence is as the rate of general body growth begins to slow down and reproductive tissues begin to mature, right? This period during adolescence is called as puberty. So when we are when we are in our childhood phase, most of our body resources like goes into the growth of the body. But when we are in adolescence phase, it grows in the maturation of the reproductive tissues. And the process where the reproductive tissues are maturing, that process is called as the puberty. So this was all about the sexual reproduction, right? So now we will move on ahead. And there is a question and you have to find the answer of it. Is how are general growth in our childhood and sexual maturation different from each other? We just discussed right now many topics, and based on that topics, you have to answer this question. And you can write down your answers in the comment box. And moving on to our next question. The period during adolescence when the reproductive tissues begin to mature is called as what? And for this question also, you have to write your answers on the chat box, right? If you are facing any problem, you can write the problem also in the chat box and I will clear it in the next class. So the process that happens in the human for reproduction is known as the fertilization, right? Fertilization is, what happens in fertilization is like the sperm cells from the male, they flow towards the egg cell and they fuse in the egg cell of the female. And then there was the formation of zygote as you saw, then the zygote develops into an embryo and then embryo develops into a whole organism. So this was the whole process that was happening in the fertilization process, right? As you saw in this diagram, right? As here you can see, first zygote is formed, and then embryo, and then the whole organism. Okay, so now we will move on ahead. So yes, so these were, what are the different indicators of sexual maturity? Like what changes were happening? Like growth of hairs in facial region, armpits, genital regions, and different parts of the body, right? And then there was the erection of penis in boys, menstruation cycle in girls, and the enlargement of breasts in girls. So feeding the baby And these were the different changes that happened during the process of adolescence or the reproduction. For reproduction, these changes are very important, right? So now we will move on ahead and see. Okay, so now my question is, what if a person does not attain sexual maturity? What will happen? Okay, for this, you also have to write your answers in the chat box because you have to think for it. Okay, so write your answers in the chat box and then we will move on ahead. And now, second question is, how is sexual maturity linked to the reproductive process? Because as you all know, when we will attain the sexual maturity, then only we will be able to sexually reproduce. But you have to write the whole process, like how and how is it helping. You can write the answer with the help of this diagram that we just discussed. Okay, so write your answers in the comment box. We will now come to the recap part. So today we discussed all about the sexual reproduction in humans. How is it happening? It is the phase is called as the adolescence or the teenage phase. And what happens in the different changes that occurs during this adolescence phase, like the growth of hairs in different parts of the body, and then the erection of penis in boys, menstruation cycle in girls, and the enlargements of breasts, the like there's the accumulation of body fat. So these are the different changes that happens during the adolescence period. And then we studied about the sexual maturity and how it is linked with the sexual reproduction. Right? So this was all about the recap part. Now coming to the homework. So these are some of the questions that you have to do, 2 questions, and then there is an activity. In this activity, what you have to do is observe yourself and any child of 5 to 6 years old that is around you, okay, or around yourself, and notice the changes between both, like in you and in that child. What are the changes that you can observe, right? And then you have to write these observations in your notebook. Yes, are you all clear? Like what we all studied today? Okay, yes. And if you have any doubt, you can ask me in the chat box. So now, thank you. I will be ending my class. We will meet in the next class. Okay, bye.